What's good, everybody? Welcome back to episode 2 of Throwback Av, and this time I'm going to be talking about hanging out at the homie's house for the first time, okay, and why this is a big deal. And the reason why it's a big deal is because my mom never really let us hang out anywhere without her being there, okay? My mom was very protective of her kids, and I understand why, you know, the stuff that she went through. She was very, very protective. Like, she wanted to make sure that we were safe. And if she couldn't see that we were safe, then we were not safe, right? So I kind of understand where she's coming from. But as a kid, you don't. You're kind of like, man, I can't do this. I can't do nothing. But, you know, I'm glad that my mom actually changed her mind. So anyway, I had this friend. And this was probably about 97. So I want to say I was in 3rd grade. And me and this one kid very much so bonded over like all the stuff that kids like, right? And at this time it was Power Rangers, it was Nickelodeon cartoons, and wrestling. And it's unfortunate because this was like the only like year that we had hung out with each other, because I eventually ended up moving, right? So it was a very short-lived friendship, but I remember never going to his house, not because like he never invited me. I think he invited me multiple times, but I just never got a chance to because my mom wouldn't allow it. But he did come over to our house. I remember him always coming over. My mom would pick us up from school. We'd go get McDonald's. You know, we would go hang out in the backyard with my dogs. I would show him, you know, where my dad would have the little chicken coops, and, you know, we would play Super Nintendo and stuff like that. So it's not like I never really got to hang around with the dude. I just was never able to go to his house, right? But, you know, over time, like his mom and my mom built a relationship. They were cool, you know, they were very friendly with each other. They trusted each other at some point, you know, that's why he was able to come over. And so that kind of opened my mom up a little bit. And she was like, one day, I think this was like a Friday, and this was probably either before summer vacation or spring break. I can't remember, but the weather outside right now is beautiful. And so every time I think of this, every time I feel this beautiful weather, I think of, you know, hanging out with the homie back then. So I don't know when it was, but I remember asking my mom a few days before Friday if I can hang out at his house on Friday. And, you know, she was a little hesitant at first, but she said, okay. Super excited because this dude has been yapping my ear off the whole damn week about, you know, the things that we can do at his house. Dude, we can, you know, go to my room. I have a bunch of like wrestling toys. I have this, I have that. But the one thing that caught my attention was the Sega Genesis. Now, Sega in general is a very mysterious company for me, okay? And at that time, even more so. Everything from the Genesis, the Saturn, the 32X, the Sega CD was always held in mysticism. There was something very interesting and intriguing about those consoles. And I think because at that time I wasn't really familiar with video games, of course I had a Super Nintendo, a Game Boy, and I knew what a Genesis was, but I didn't really care for those things all that often. You know, I was more so the kid to want to go outside and, you know, kick the ball around, play basketball, play tag, you know, just do kid stuff outside. I didn't really care for video games all that much. So I didn't know the impact that Sega had on the video game world. You know what I mean? To me, Sega was a knockoff of Nintendo. I know it's silly, but mind you, I was like 6-7 years old at this time, dude. I didn't know the difference, and I really didn't care, right? To me, a video game console was Nintendo, and that was that. But I'm not gonna lie, if I can go back in time and choose what console I wanted to have, I probably would go with the Sega Genesis. But anyway, my friend was really hyping up the whole hanging out at his house experience, right? So I just couldn't wait, dude. And so when Friday came around, his mom came and like picked us up, and we went to his house finally. And he lived in this beautiful, beautiful, like, neighborhood, man. Like, not, I guess you could call it, like, middle class. It was very middle class fancy. It wasn't anything bougie, or it wasn't really hood. It was around the corner from the hood, which is where I lived. I lived in this blue house, but the surrounding houses around it were really ghetto, right? So, like, our house was the only decent looking one. But this guy lived in a really, really nice neighborhood, man. The trees, I just remember the image of like all these trees lined up, all the shade, like the sun kind of peering through the different branches. You can see the wind blowing. I mean, like the set, you couldn't put it in any more artistic way than that. As soon as we walk into his house, one of the first things I'm greeted with is like the sight of the house. Very clean. They had so many windows. You can see the light like pouring in through there like this. It just seemed very, very heavenly, bro. I'm not gonna lie. As I'm walking in, you see this like this one guy like come around the corner, like from the living room. I think that's what was the living room. And he was very like old school cholo, man. Like this dude was like, he was short of stock. He was like 5'7", like my height. He had like, he was bald. He had a couple of tattoos. He had like the, you know, the Wyatt Earp handlebar mustache, like very old school, you know, kind of vibe to him, but super nice dude. You know, he extended his hand. He was like, hey, my name is so-and-so. And I shook his hand. I introduced myself. And, you know, he was like, welcome to our house and whatnot. I was kind of intimidated at first, you know, because he came approaching like he was about to, you know, but they're like, who's this fool? Who's this fool right here, eh? What's this fucking little mocoso doing in my house, eh? But it was nothing like that. You know what I mean? It was very cool, chill. And, you know, I felt comfortable right away. So after introducing ourselves, my friend was like, all right, whatever, you know, come on, let's go to my room. So I follow him, you know, through this like little short, narrow hallway. Then we turn to the right and we go into his room. And this room, man, like I admired it so much. And I was a bit envious and jealous because I never really had my own room growing up. And when I did, it was short-lived, right? And this kid like had everything that a boy could have ever wanted, man. Like he had the cool posters on the wall. I think they were like ripped out from like magazines. He had a couple of posters of like wrestlers, and like everything about it was just so movie like. I don't know how other way to explain it. The way that they designed a boy's room in the 90s in films, that's exactly what it looked like. And that's what, you know, the first things that I saw. And on the little corner, he had like all these like action figures, and he had this cool like this ring. I think it was Raw. I think it was like this cool wrestling ring, and it had Raw in the middle, and he had a bunch of these cool wrestlers. And I was like, dude, like this is so freaking sick, you know. I think and seeing that, I think that was the reason why I had my own wrestling ring later. A year later, I got myself one, I think for a Christmas or for my birthday, I can't remember, but I do remember having that exact one. And I'm pretty sure I got it because I was just like, I gotta have it when I went to his house. So he was showing me all this cool stuff, man. His toys, his movie collection. He was talking about the posters on the wall that he got to watch TV in his room. He had cable in his room, man, which was pretty badass too, right? But the piece de la resistance was the Sega Genesis. And based off what I could remember, I had to write it down because, you know, my memory faults me at times. And the games that I do remember him having on deck, which isn't a lot, you know, it's only a few games, but the ones that I do remember seeing were, as I quote, Sonic 2, WrestleMania Arcade, and Altered Beast. Now, first and foremost, all of these games are off the hook, okay? Sonic 2 is classic. WrestleMania Arcade is severely underrated. And Altered Beast is another classic. So right away, he turns on the TV, puts in the first game, and you can guess what game that was, Sonic 2. And he's like, dude, you're gonna like this one a lot. It's just like Super Mario, but you know, he runs faster and stuff. Like, he's really like selling this to me, and it's getting me excited, bro. I never played Sonic before, you know. I might have seen an ad or seen in a magazine or something, Sonic, he had some sort of attitude. He was cool, right? And so I was excited just to, like, you know, play something that was like Mario, but, you know, more with an attitude. So my first impression was, why the hell is Tails following me? I didn't understand why this little creature was following me around. It was a major distraction. Every time you jumped, you see Tails like following you. I didn't like that. I didn't like Tails tailing you. I didn't like that idea of that. It would always get on my nerves. And it wasn't until later on that I realized that you can go in the options and choose to have them both, have Sonic or Tails. You know, you don't have to walk around with both of them at the same time. So that was like my first impression. I didn't like that at all. And second was the fact that freaking Sonic was too fast. To me at that time, it wasn't playable. Now, obviously, like, I get it. I didn't know how to attack an enemy. Okay, sure, you can jump on them, but you lose more rings than you collect. There's always some sort of obstruction in the way, either spikes or there's always like a wall there. Like, you can never catch a break in Sonic. And when I was a kid playing it for the first time, I couldn't believe my eyes. I was like, no, man, this has to be better, you know? Like, we did play it for a little bit, but I just couldn't recoup the disappointment. There wasn't enough there that I played that made it feel like, you know what, I would want to play this again. After it was over with, I just didn't want to play it again. And I think he noticed it too. He was seeing the look on my face, and I think that kind of, you know, that kind of broke his heart, I guess, or something like that. Because I remember him asking me, well, if I liked it, and I was like, yeah, I like it. You know, I don't know. I didn't have the heart to say, you know what, I don't like it, man. This shit is like fucking weird or whatever, right? But I didn't like it in the beginning, and I think he sensed it, but he didn't push the issue either. I just said, yeah, I kind of like it, and then I passed him the controller. He was kind of showing me how to play it and whatnot, but like I said, by then, I just didn't even want to play it no more. I know, it's crazy, dude. So after like 10 minutes of playing Sonic, we jumped to WrestleMania Arcade, and he had 2 controllers, which was fun, because we can play a 2-player game, right? So we did that, and I gotta tell y'all, man, WrestleMania Arcade is one hell of a title. I like the cartoony aspect of it all. I like that it is arcade. Obviously, that's words in the title of the game, but I don't like games, sports games in particular, that are very formal, if that makes sense. You know, like when it comes to Madden, like I've never been a fan of Madden because it's playing exactly like a real life game of football. Like, I hate that shit. Let me play blitz. Let me throw the ball in like the most ridiculous ways possible. After like the player is down, you can just like beat the crap out of them. Like, that's fun. That's what video games are all about. Nobody wants to play a video game about something serious. Why so serious in a video game? I don't know, man. Make it arcade, make it fun. WrestleMania Arcade was that fun, and I just enjoyed it a whole lot. But Razor Ramon was my go-to. You know, I know him more as Scott Hall. You know, people at that time know him more as Razor Ramon, but Scott Hall, hey yo, was fucking OG, man. You know, NWO, like that whole thing was just like my favorite, dude. And every time I play this game, even now, I get this nostalgic feeling. I'm not very good at it, mind you, but every time I do play it, I always get this rush of nostalgia during that time because I remember my face lighting up with playing that game. So it was a cool little session that we had. Probably another 10 minutes that we spent on that game. Probably a couple of minutes more than Sonic. So after playing WrestleMania, we finally got to Altered Beast. And my first impressions were, I was somewhat impressed, you know, like I kind of like the spooky atmosphere of Altered Beast. And there was something very eerie about it. It did give me kind of the creeps, but I think more so because of like the, like the voice that's in there. You know, as soon as you start the game, it's like, rise from your grave. Rise from your grave. And then as every time you power up, it's like, power up. Power up. And then the guy that would laugh at the end after, you know, he suck all the energy out of you, pause. You know, it was a very creepy game, but I enjoyed it a lot. And I guess like my only complaints were at the time, I wasn't a fan of like the sound effects. It had like this weird like crunchy sound to it every time, and I don't know, the music was cool, but it just didn't have that bass, or it didn't have that distinctive Super Nintendo sound that I was so accustomed to, right? Altered Beast was cool nonetheless. I didn't get very far. We both didn't get very far. I'm pretty sure he beat the game, but you know, I don't think he was dedicated enough to beat it, and neither was I, so we really didn't care. We just wanted to play it just for a little bit. So after that was said and done, he was like, hey man, let's go outside, let's go kick the ball around, or let's go play basketball, have a basketball court. Now when he said he had a basketball court, to me, I was thinking this dude had like a whole auditorium in the back with 2 basketball courts, you know what I mean? My dumbass little kid mind. But when I got back there, he had like a little area within the patio. He was able to put it there, and you know, we can just like shoot hoops and stuff like that. You know, we did that for a little bit, but so right away, so when we walked outside, right, I don't think he realized, or I don't think he remembered that his dog was like, well, he knows that his dog is nice, right? I don't know that. I never been to his house. I don't know his freaking dog. So when we go outside to the backyard, I don't realize he has a dog until I see this big brown pit bull just come barreling towards me. Okay. And I didn't know what to do. I don't think he even like realized like, you know, that it was scaring me. I just froze in. I remember freezing in place and this dog just come running towards me. And I thought he was going to eat me up, bro. I was like, I'm a goner. You know, my mom's going to visit me in the hospital with a fucking missing head or something. And she'll be like, oh, I can't believe I left my son. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. I was like, so much crap was running through my mind. So the dog just comes running towards me and I couldn't say anything, but the first words that came out of my mouth were mommy. Why mommy? I missed my mommy. Mommy, please help me. I said mommy. And fucking like, I didn't say it loud enough where like, you know, it was embarrassing. I said it under my breath. So I don't think my friend heard it, you know, thankfully. Cause I mean, jeez, dude, I wouldn't be able to live that embarrassment down. But I froze in place and I said mommy, and this dog like just came up to me and just started licking my hand. And he was very like cute aggressive. He wasn't angry aggressive. He didn't try to bite me, nibble on me or anything. Like, you know, he was very pushing his head against my arm, against like my ribs, and you know, he was trying to lick my hands and stuff like that. And then, you know, that's where my friend Martin came. He was like, oh, this is so and so, like, you know, he's a very nice dog, he don't bite or anything. And so, you know, I was petting him and I got familiar. I was like, okay, you know, he is nice. And then that was that. But man, that fear, I don't think I've felt a fear like that in a long time. That was like a very, very fucking scary situation to be in, because I thought that dog was gonna murder me. He was a scary looking dog, man, you know what I mean? But I'm glad the dog was nice. We got to kick it in the backyard. He was following us around, you know, like every time we kicked the soccer ball around or played basketball, he would want to be inside of the mix. And so, you know, that was pretty cool to see. He was no Air Bud, mind you, but it was cool to hang out with the dog. So while we were hanging out, his mom came outside, right, and was like, hey boys, lunch is ready. Now, for me, the word lunch, okay, you couldn't get me out of a situation any faster, okay? When you say there's lunch over here, I'm gone. I'm a hungry kind of guy. I love food. I love the study of food. I love the look of food. It's always interesting. Foods from different cultures, different shapes and sizes. I love food, man. So when she said lunch, I was gone. So when we went inside, oh man, the smell, like there was like this cheesy, like aromatic, savory smell in the air. Man, it was just like, it almost felt like a cartoon. You know how when they follow the little smoke and they smell and they're kind of just following it and stuff like that, and they end up at the table or at the freaking window where the pie's at? That's how I kind of felt. You know, me and my friend were kind of following the smell into the dining room. And when we got there, you see this nice huge casserole pan of enchiladas, okay? These beautiful cheesy green sauce enchiladas. Oh my god, dude, just thinking about it is making me hungry all over again. And that wasn't it. After she put the casserole plate on the table, she came back with like a few slices of like chicken breast or something like that. And I was like, oh man, we are gonna grub, boy. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Hey, I'm telling y'all, this was beginning to be one of the best Fridays of all time. So we sat down, you know, and as she's like serving us, she's dipping the spatula inside the casserole plate and pulling out the enchiladas. You just see the string of cheese just like coming off, dude. You can see the steam. Oh my gosh, like, I don't know, it's swing. So after like the whole lunch was ready, and I don't know at what point in the day we didn't want to like play anything, no toys, video games or anything like that. We decided to go to the living room and see what his dad was doing, and miraculously his dad was starting to watch Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Now this was my first time ever watching a sci-fi movie of this caliber. Okay, I have seen movies. I was a huge fan of Willy Wonka, Wizard of Oz and stuff like that. But something like this, something like Terminator 2 was something that was never on my radar. And I think because like my mom never watched these type of films, and I don't blame her. I don't think she really had the time to when she was younger, because she was always busy working. She was always trying to provide for herself and for her family. So, you know, she didn't really get to experience 80s pop culture the way that most people did at that age. After we finished watching that movie, I think that was around the same time my mom finally got home from work and picked me up. I just remember her going inside the house. You know, she started talking with the lady, and you know, she introduced herself to the husband. He said hi. You know, they kind of minced words for probably another 5 minutes, and we ended up leaving. And that was that. You know, for me, it seemed like the longest day ever, in a good way, not a negative way, like, oh, when is my mom coming? No, like, it just seemed like a long, fun day. But in actuality, it was maybe about like an hour and a half or two, like maybe 2 hours that I was spending time there, right? But yeah, man, I'll never forget the first time going to his house and seeing all that. And also, it wasn't the last time either. You know, there was like a gap between that and the end of that summer that we got to hang out a whole lot more. He would go out to my house a whole lot more, and I would go to his as well, right? Because once you break the seal of going over somebody's house, and if the parents like you enough, you can always come over, right? And from what I could remember, I think I went there quite a few times. And I think he had a sister the same age as my sister, so they would, like, the mom would bring them both to our house, and they would just hang out and stuff like that. So I don't know, man, it was like a cool little relationship that we had, you know. And like I said, I didn't really have friends growing up, so it was cool to have someone that close. You know what I mean? But unfortunately, you know, at the end of that summer, we ended up leaving. You know, I never got to see him again. I had to move schools. I actually went across the country to Virginia. Okay, and that's just like a whole other can of worms that I don't know if I should open or not in like future episodes. I don't know how deep I want to get into with this series. You know, if I want to keep it above the surface or I want to dig deep a little bit more. Obviously I can't get into the dark shit because, like, this ain't no damn therapy session. But you know, I'm not sure exactly how deep I want to go, so I'm gonna keep my options open on that. But you know, with all that being said, I did I had to move out and moved to Virginia, and I got to experience a whole lot of other cool stuff there too, you know, which is a whole video in itself. And that's more so like a wintry type of video or a fall kind of video, which I'll get to that probably in a few months or something like that, you know, when it starts getting cool outside again. So yes, so that was it, man. That was episode 2, hanging out at a homie's house for the first time, trying out the Genesis, having some delicious enchiladas, watching Terminator 2, and getting scared of a big pit bull dog that I had to call my mommy. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, man, really cool memories. Every time I think around this time of year, spring break, the summer, it just takes me back to that moment. And you know, I wish I would appreciated that a whole lot more. You know, that's kind of the things we look at now as we become adults. We look back at our childhood and like, you know what? I should have like lived in the moment better. Instead of trying to rush to like do the next thing, I could have enjoyed, for example, like Sonic 2 a whole lot more, instead of being like, let's move on to the next game. You know what I mean? Like, I could have enjoyed it a whole lot more. But that's just part of life. You know, you don't know that until you get older. When you're a kid, you want everything to be fast, instant. And when you're an adult, you want everything to be slower because time just goes flying. Right? So yes, that was episode 2. But, ladies and gentlemen, I want to know what y'all think. What do you guys think of this episode? When was the first time you ever played a Genesis? When was it? Like, do you have any memories of hanging out at a homie's house for the first time? Wrestling? What are your guys' thoughts? I really want to know everything, you know, you guys want to talk about. Anything nostalgia, I'm here to read and respond. So if you haven't yet, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, smash that notification bell so you don't miss out on any more episodes of Throwback Ave and any of my other content that I have coming soon. So muchas gracias again, ladies and gentlemen. Thank y'all for coming through once again, and I will catch y'all in the next one. All right, deuce.